Hi
guys,
guys, welcome to our live chat,
welcome to our live chat. Tune in with Ran and Dave. Let's unzip a topic. I'm Ranjini,
and I'm Devapriya,
and
and
today we are
today is
here
our
to unzip
episode number
our episode
21.
21. Yes, that's right. So, Priya, how are you doing?
I'm good, I'm fantastic, and the Deepavali mood is still lit. How are you, Ranjini? I know you have been hectic schedule. Is that okay now? Are you free from it?
No, I'm absolutely great, and yes, and it's still on. Unfortunately, I tried to catch up with the Deepavali mode, but I am unable to do it. So, really looking forward to get my job done, and then I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to switch my mode to Deepavali mode. But on the other
Yes,
hand, I heard this news that entire
Peninsula.
peninsular Malaysia, except for certain
Yeah,
states, Perlis, Pahang, and
Pahang
Kelantan,
and
is
Kelantan
under PKPB.
from
Yeah,
9th November.
Kelantan,
Yeah,
excluding them, it's under PKPB for a month.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Correct. You're
Okay,
right.
that's really
I
yeah.
heard the
So
news.
so that's really something. Well, I guess it's for our safety, and of course, Priya, I guess your schedule will be hectic.
Yes,
Being a
as
frontline,
usual.
definitely one of the frontline, and really hope things will get better, and all of us, stay safe and can get through this together. Okay.
Yes.
Without delaying, I'm going to share my screen as per usual.
Yes.
So
Today is going to be a very colorful topic.
yeah, that's right. So this is our logo. This program is powered by MyNap's Malaysia's best online learning platform.
And you guys can access my apps whenever you want with the link provided, especially now in this MCO time. It's very useful, guys, believe me.
All right. So today's topic, as shared yesterday, is going to be on life beneath the sea, coral
Mm-hmm.
reefs. So our
Yep.
panelist is Priya.
Okay, our panelist is Mr. Lau Chai Ming, and we can also call him as Mr. Edmund. He's a program manager at Reef Check Malaysia and also co-founder of Reef Stakes. So you guys can access Reef Stakes by www.reefstakes.com. So without further delay, let's go into the topic.
All right. So I'm going to stop sharing, and yes, that's right. So without delaying, we are going to invite our panelist today, Mr. Edmund Lau.
All the way
Hi, Mr.
from
Edmund.
Sarawak.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Priya. Hi, Ranjini.
How
How are
are
you
you
girls
doing?
doing?
We are excellent,
I'm good. I'm
as
good.
usual.
Sarawak is
Okay.
nice now, currently. Good weather.
First of all, first of all, thank you so much for sparing your Saturday night, weekend night with us, tuning with Running Dave to share awesome knowledge you have about coral, and we are really privileged to have you on board with us today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here.
And
Okay,
so,
actually,
without
I'm really looking forward for this topic. I remember 2 weeks before we had something like about the sea, but it's about the turtles, and that was a fantastic topic we have done. And this one again about the sea, but it's on coral reefs, a colorful topic which most of us don't know about. So this episode is going to be really knowledgeable for all the audience. And yeah, without further ado, let's go for the
okay.
questions.
So before we go further with the questions, I'm going to share a mini video about corals for those who have not been to a coral area, just read it by book or have watched it through TV. So I'm going to share a video on that. So let
Yes,
me share. All right.
it's gonna be interesting.
All right, so that was a video by Reef Check. The coral shown in the video is actually our own coral in Malaysia, I believe, Mr. Edmund.
Yes, yes. It's actually done by one of our volunteers. As you can see, a film by Vietnam. So she has compiled some of her videos taken from our colleagues and some of her own videos and just combined and made it into a film.
Wow, that's kudos to you
Okay,
guys.
that's awesome.
You guys are
Awesome.
doing a great job. Yeah.
Yeah. So without delay, we're going to enter. We're going to start our stream. And for the viewers, if you have any questions to Mr. Edmund regarding coral reef and related questions, so that you can type that in the comment box, and we will direct the question at the end of the show to Mr. Edmund. So moving to our session, Mr. Edmund, I would start with. One of the prominent beauties of the underwater world is the colorful gems or the colorful areas called the coral reef. So my question to you is coral itself a living thing or a geologic formation in the seabed? And second, if the coral reef are living things, are they plant or an animal?
Okay, so to help me guide the answers, I have just share a little bit of slides, right? Because this is an opportunity for those who have not been to the reefs. They may not imagine how a coral reef looks like. So I have some slides just to show some photos and guide in the answer. All right. So please allow me to just have a quick share. All right. So is it up? Can you see it?
Yeah, I'm going to add this to the screen. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, so this is, as you see in the background, basically this is what coral reef is, how it looks like. There's fish, a lot of corals down there. It's really a magical world. For those who have not been out diving or snorkeling, you should give it a try. But not now. Now it's CMCO. Wait until when everything is back to normal. When we have better tourism industry, where no more mass tourism, so that you can go and enjoy and have a real look at the reef. All right, so back to your question, what is a coral? So people always confuse coral whether it's a plant or it's a rock or animal or something else. Even you mentioned it could be a geological formation. So back in those days, before they describe coral as classifies coral as a certain taxonomy level, it's thought to be like some people think that it's a rock and it's a geological formation. But actually, coral is classified as an animal. So hopefully this will clarify a lot of confusion. Why do people confuse them as plant? I'll explain a little bit later. So I'm just going to take opportunity to describe a little bit of the anatomy of coral as an animal. So you can see from here, let me just use this pointer. So you can see here, this is a structure of a single polyp of coral. So the polyp itself is an animal. And this polyp has a ring of tentacles here, which will help them feeding, catching food that floats around in the water column and feed into the mouth and into the digestive system here. So it's a very simple structure for one polyp. And for many, many polyps, it will form a colony, right? So why do people confuse coral as a plant? It's because in the tissue of coral contains a plant-like structure known as zooxanthellae. It's a type of algae that lives symbiotically with coral. So for the benefit of those who don't understand what symbiotic relationship is, in the simplest term, it's like I help you, you help me kind of thing. Yeah. In a good way, yeah. Don't get me wrong. It's not those I help you, you help me in a bad way, that kind of thing. So zooxanthellae lives in the tissue of corals here, and they photosynthesize because they are plants, right? And because of the photosynthesis process, they provide up to 90% of the food to coral. So hence, coral needs sunlight to survive, and that is where perhaps the confusion, where coral people think they might be plants. And because of coral, they come in hard structures as well. They have skeleton, and some people may confuse them as rock. So that's why people may not know what coral is. So hopefully with this simple explanation, perhaps I have explained and clarified the confusion.
So guys,
That's
yes, thank you
nice.
so much, Mr. Edmund. Yep. So, guys,
Yep.
the coral is an animal. It's not a plant. It's not a geologic formation.
Oh,
And
I
I think
thought
that we
it
have
was a
another
plant.
question on that.
I thought it was a
Really?
plant.
It's okay.
All
Now you
right.
know.
So I guess
So
that
next time
Yes.
when you go, yeah, next time you go out diving or snorkeling, please avoid stepping on them or damaging them. So yeah, this is one of the ways to be more
Okay, sure.
friendly to corals. Yeah.
Sure, that's for
sure.
sure. So moving on to our second question. So this is basically
Mm-hmm.
like what is coral reefs and whether it's animal or a plant. So that one is done. So Mr. Edmund, I just want to ask how many types of corals are there
Sorry.
and now why actually they are colorful? I don't get it. Means they're so colorful. I feel like it's a plant and flowers, something like that. It's like a garden on the seabed. So can you just explain
Okay.
why it is colorful
Yeah.
and how many types are there?
All right. So let me just continue sharing.
Sure.
Okay, so how many types of corals are there? So if you're referring to types, we only talk. I will only talk on two types, which is the soft coral and the hard corals. All right, and to answer your question, why they are colorful, remember
Mm-hmm.
previously I mentioned in coral tissue contains a plant algae, which
Yeah.
is zooxanthellae. So besides
Zooxanthellae.
providing food and energy to corals, the color comes from the zooxanthellae itself. So in each individual corals will have different types of zooxanthellae, hence giving them different colors. So talking about the type of corals, hard coral and soft coral, I'm going to go with soft coral first. So this is
Mm-hmm.
example of soft coral in the water, how it looks like. And soft corals typically will have 8 tentacles. So remember just now the coral anatomy, we have tentacles, right? So typically for soft
Uh-huh.
coral, they will have 8. So you can count here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And
Yeah.
they are named soft coral because of the structure, which is soft. All right. So I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned just now that corals also have a skeleton. So for soft coral, their skeleton are made of sclerites. Sclerites. So
Mm-hmm.
sclerites is like a pieces of hard structures that slowly builds together, and then it forms a soft structure, which is for the soft coral. Okay. Soft coral
Okay.
comes in different shapes as well. Just now you can see the previous one is more like encrusting to the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and here you have a type of soft coral which are like branching and, like you say, like flowery and garden-like. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
here these are different soft corals, as you can see here, and here this is the hard coral. Right. In the next photo, you can see on the bottom right here, it's also soft corals. You can see here it's like rock, and then the soft coral grows on top of it. They have
Mm-hmm.
like what we call this a base here, and then that's where they attach themselves to the substrate at the bottom, to the rock. And here, over to the middle and towards the left, this is what we call the hard coral, right? Which is hard structure compared to the soft one. So it's easy to see in the water. If there's current, you can see the soft coral waving very nicely. Whereas for the hard coral, it's just static there. The structure doesn't move. All right. So this is the structure that will have its function, which I will explain a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a zoom up view of how hard coral look like. So this is the polyp, and you can see it also has tentacles, but typically for hard coral, the tentacles are in 6 or multiples of 6. All right, so it's very difficult to count here because it got jumbled up the photo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very hard for you to make sure that whether it's what's the exact number, but it is not 8. So we know that this is 6 or multiples of 6. So this is actually a hard coral.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Um,
Okay.
So yeah, that's the two types of corals to answer your question, Priya. So
That's
another type of
that's
corals
nice.
would be like deep sea corals, deep water corals, which goes down to 1,000 meters. But I'm not going to talk about that because that's not my expertise.
All
Okay,
right.
okay.
Sure.
All right. So I think that's beautifully explained. So the I would call it the person who was responsible to give the colorful colors to the coral will be zooxanthellae. So I guess
Zooxanthellae.
Yeah, it's the algae
yes,
that lives inside the coral. Yeah.
the
All right.
algae living inside the coral. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So that's about that question, and we're moving on to the next question. Next question, which is briefly describe on how a coral become a coral reef, and in general, how long will it take for a coral reef to be formed? Mr. Edmund.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So let me just use the slide as a guide.
Mhm.
So how does coral becomes coral reefs? All right. So I'm going to use a little bit of help here with the photo. So as I mentioned just now, coral, this is a polyp, and you can see I'm referring to hard coral now because we have more than 8 tentacles. It could be six multiples of six. So it's hard coral. So this one, it's a polyp. Okay. So when many polyps grow together, all right, it forms a colony. So this is what we call a colony. So this colony you can see here. Let me just narrow down the arrow. So you can see here this one polyp with tentacles. This is one polyp, and you have many polyps. It forms a colony. Right. So when you have a lot of colonies and combined with different species of coral, this is how coral reefs is formed. All right. So for the benefit of those without a scientific background, so I'm going to explain a very layman term. So assume that this polyp is like an individual unit of an apartment. All right. So you have one unit here, one unit here. All right. And then when it comes and it grows to become a colony, you can assume that each unit here becomes a block of apartment because this polyp are usually the same clone from the same polyp, right? Forms the same colony. So you can see the unit and apartment usually are all the same, regardless of every floor, right? So
Yeah.
this is one block of apartment, so we call it a colony. And then when you form reefs, you have many blocks of apartment, right? So these many blocks of apartment, you can call it like a residential area or housing area or an apartment area. So this is what coral reefs looks like. So if you compare it this way, hopefully this will help people understand how corals become coral reefs. Now, I like to continue because people tend to use coral reefs and coral reefs ecosystem, the word interchangeably. When we
Mm-hmm.
talk about coral reefs, it refers to the reef that is built by corals. But when we talk about coral reef ecosystem, it's referring to the ecosystem that's hosted by the coral reefs. So to explain this, I use with the guide of a card game that me and my friends have developed, designed, and created, which is Reef Sticks. That's where you saw I was a co-founder of Reef Sticks. So I'm just going to use the guide from the card that we use for educational tool. So everything in the ocean starts with a rock, and then slowly there will be coralline algae growing on the rock to attract corals. So they have some chemical cues that will attract coral larvae, and coral larvae will slowly travel and settle down on the rock, and hence we will have soft coral and hard corals growing over an rock and becomes a coral reef here. All right. And then slowly, when it becomes, when there's hard coral and soft coral, invertebrates will start to occupy this place for food and for shelter. All right. And then we have higher up in the animal kingdom, we have fish. So reef fishes will start to occupy this area as well. And hence, when we have corals, we have invertebrates, we have fishes, this is how coral reef ecosystem is built. So same goes, like in the card game, we have this guide here. This is ground zero, and then we have level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. So this is the final form coral reef ecosystem So where we have other organisms associated to coral reefs like invertebrates and fish. So hopefully this gives a clearer idea how corals forms coral reefs, eventually form coral reef ecosystem.
Okay, that's really,
That
really
was
an effective way of
fantastic.
communicating, really. I guess, Priya, you
Yeah.
now know how it's formed, isn't it? I think, yeah, from this
Yes.
one session,
I
yeah,
hope.
we already can see the partitioning of it.
Yes, I hope
Yeah,
after this, if I go on the road, I see any apartment, I will just think about coral reefs. This is how coral reefs form.
Yeah, it's
And
really
about
nice
the card,
the
it's very
analogy which
fun.
you use.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's very engaging for the layman's especially. And
yes.
the way of using that simple cards in explaining
Uh-huh.
about the ecosystem of coral reef is fantastic as well. So,
Yeah.
Reef Stakes,
We're going
you
to
guys are
touch
doing
that
amazing
later.
job.
Yeah,
Yep,
we're
yep.
going to talk about that card thingy later, but I guess this is really very, very effectively put in words and shared to the audience. I believe the audience are learning a lot about coral reefs today. And for you guys, if you have any questions to Mr. Edmund, you can type that in the comment box. And at the same time, you can also share this stream to your Facebook page or any group so that other people also can benefit from this session. And before we move on to the next question. I would like to share a mini video from YouTube regarding coral reef formations. I'm going to please allow me to share that. Just a moment.
Yeah, we have colorful movies to watch today.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I saw this. I guess it's a little bit. So
All
it's
right.
how a coral reefs formed. So let me see if it's working. Yeah.
Today, we're going to explore the wonderful world of coral reefs. We will find them to be full of strange shapes, fascinating creatures, and brilliant colours, like reds, blues, yellows, oranges, purples, and greens. The landscape changes by the second because the reef inhabitants are constantly moving. They are filled with fish and many other strange animals that all have a role to play, keeping the reefs vibrant and alive. Coral reefs are second only to rainforests in the huge number of plants and animals that live there. They are gigantic communities of living things, all coexisting together. So, just what are coral reefs? Well, they're large underwater structures made of limestone, corals, algae, sponges, anemones, and so much more. Coral reefs are the oldest type of ecosystem in the world, and they've been around for more than 240 million years. An ecosystem is a community of plants and animals, along with the environment that they live in. Can you believe that these massive reef structures have been built over time by tiny animals that are about the size of an eraser on the end of a pencil? They are called coral polyps and are very small, soft-bodied animals that might look more like plants.
All right, so that's an open open source. It's freely available in YouTube, and we just thought of giving a picture of what Mr. Edmund has explained. I mean, obviously, what he has explained also was very, very easy to understand, and that's just to give a feel of those who have not been to, have not done a diving or at least a snorkeling and witness coral in real life. So that just to give you better illustration of coral reef. Let's move on to the next question, Priya.
Yep. So that's definitely another world we have inside this world. So sea underwater is another world. So that coral thing is really fantastic. So I want to ask Mr. Edmund now, what is the function of a coral reef? I mean, why is it important for the marine ecosystem, Mr. Edmund?
Okay, so to answer your question, let's just continue using the slides to guide. So why are coral reef they are important? What are their functions? Basically, they provide ecosystem services for nature and human. What do I mean by that is like, okay, so coral reefs actually acts as a nursery ground for a quarter of all marine species. So some of the marine species will need to grow within the coral reef ecosystem before they move out to the open ocean. And coral reefs also is the home to more than a third of known fish species in the world. So remember I mentioned just now hard coral provides a hard structure,
Yeah.
so that this becomes a shelter to a lot of fish and also marine species, right? So with the
Mm-hmm.
hard structure protects them from predators. So this is why it's a very good place to be a nursery ground and also home for fish species. Right. And coral reefs, because of the hard structure also, it protects 20% of the world's coast from wave erosion. So as you can see over here, when we have strong waves, it tends to erode our coast. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So how does coral reef function as a protection? Is that by their having the hard structure, so when the wave comes, the hard structure reduces the energy of the waves before they hit the shore. Right. So then with
Mm-hmm.
that, having a lot of healthy reefs growing, so it acts as a
Mm-hmm.
barrier, as a buffer before the energy hits the shore. And it's a very good function of protection because compared to if we use artificial, what we call this barriers, coral reefs
Mm-hmm.
is living organisms. So they continue to grow, continue to grow. So just a fun fact, like the Great Barrier Reef is actually the largest living structure in the world. You can actually see it from the moon as well. So yeah, that's one thing about coral reefs.
Okay.
Yeah, and in terms of services, ecosystem services for humans, um, it serves as a protein
Mm-hmm.
source for all of us. Malaysians like our seafood, fish, crabs, and all sorts of different types of seafood. In fact, we are one of the highest consumer of seafood in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to relook into that so that we can become more sustainable. Because of the demand for seafood, it also gives a source of economy to fishermen, right? So
Mm-hmm.
fishermen, when they go out to the sea, they catch the fish. If they catch it sustainably, it will be much much better for us. So then this is the source of economy for fishermen. All right. Besides that, coral reefs also becomes a tourist attraction. So a lot of the islands have provide snorkeling trips, diving services. So some people just go to holiday along the beach, right? So this the function of reefs provide tourist attraction, which will also contribute to the source of economy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some research has also found that some chemicals in the reefs actually help in terms of cosmetics and medicine. So, for example, this brand La Mer, it's a cosmetic product that uses the extract from one type of seaweed known
Mm-hmm.
as kelp. They managed to extract the concentration and they synthesize it in the lab to mass produce and becomes a cosmetic product for sale. All right, so there's a lot more function, but I'm just going to go with only these few
Mm-hmm.
important function of the reefs. All right, so
Okay.
yeah, hopefully this gives a little bit more understanding about why coral reefs are important and why we need to protect them. Although for people who live far away from the islands or coastal towns,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if they always ask why it's important to them, we can always look into their daily life. They rely on the reefs for food, for fish, for
Mm-hmm.
seafood. So yeah, this is one of the importance is how we are all connected as well.
Fantastic. So it's automatically divided into two. One is on the natural side of importance, which is as a barrier and all those things. And secondly, we
Yeah.
also can talk about the commercial part, which is economy, tourism, and source of protein, of course. So that's fantastic explanation, Mr. Edmund. Thank you. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes, Ranjini.
yeah, it's a power pack points, power points
Mm-hmm.
that he
Yep,
should
yep.
to us. And it's definitely, but many actually may not know this fact that, on the aspect of it's like a buffer. I mean, for especially for the erosion aspects, many don't know about that. So I guess this will give an awareness or new information for you guys. And we're going to move to the next part of the session, which is a question on how many species of corals are there, and where can we find them, in the sense that in Malaysia, at which region can we find it? And maybe you can name a few of the places, Mr. Edmund.
Okay, sure. So how many species of corals and where we can find them? So if you ask me about species, I would say it's more than 1,000 species, right? And now I'm sure that there's more because with technology, some of the species are being identified or being separated because of molecular work, where they look at the genetics and they define that, oh, this could be another species, this is another species instead of the same species. So as time goes on, I'm sure there's going to be more, but I'm just going to say slightly more than 1,000 species. And where are they found? So corals are actually very sensitive organisms. So they need to live in a very optimum condition where there's enough light, the right temperature between 18 degrees to about 29 degrees Celsius. And hence, they are found around the tropical region here, as you can see from this map, right? The one with the orange where the reefs are. So they are very close to the equator line because of the consistent light and temperature. All right. And let me zoom into Malaysia. As you say, like name a few places where we can find reefs. And Malaysia is actually very, very fortunate because we are located in this place called Coral Triangle, which is the hotspot for the highest coral reef biodiversity. In this area itself, in Malaysia, we have more than 500 species of corals, more than 2,000 species of fish. And maybe you have heard this last week when you talk about the sea turtle. In Malaysia, we can actually see 4 out of 7 species of sea turtles. Although one of them, the leatherback, we would say that it's functionally extinct in Malaysia because we haven't seen them for a long time, but it used to be here. And also, we know that there's at least to be 27 species of marine mammals within Malaysian waters, right? And this region consists of 6 countries, yeah? So Indonesia, Philippines, Timor-Leste, Papua New Guinea, and Solomon Islands. So these are the countries that forms the Coral Triangle in this part of the world, yeah. So as you can see, the colors here, the darker red it is, the highest species diversity in this region. So half of Sabah here is the highest, and then followed by the rest of Malaysia, ranked second in terms of the diversity numbers. Okay. So yeah, I hope that answer your question.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit on like example of places in Malaysia where you can maybe the name of the islands or spots that are famous for their variety of coral reefs that people can look forward to.
Okay. So in Peninsular Malaysia, the popular places with nice reef is on the east coast. We have places like Perhentian, Redang, Tioman, and Sibu and Tinggi in Johor. Pulau Au and Pemanggil is one of the few places which also have very nice reefs. And of course, in Sabah, I think everybody knows Sabah, where Sipadan, Mabul Island, Sempurna area, Langkayan, and Had Datu area. These are the areas known to have a very nice coral reef areas. So if you are looking for places to go and have a look, just start with these places first before we move on. There's a lot of natural beauty in our own backyard in Malaysia. So during this pandemic, it's time to appreciate what we have, so that we can protect them more. You know. So some people we say if you don't know it, you can't appreciate, and if you can't appreciate, then you won't protect it. So I hope that more Malaysians will start to appreciate the reefs and put more emphasis on protection for the reefs.
Added to the bucket list, Ranjini. We have one of the turtles and this one. Okay, I'm just hoping this
Keep
MCA
that
finish.
in your bucket list, Priya, because I guess from our session, especially on marine lives, we have done
Yeah,
mangrove,
it's
sea turtle, and
beautiful, isn't it?
now on coral. I'm glad that you actually. I'm seeing a real testimony here. Priya is from different industry altogether. She's a pharmacist, and
Yeah.
getting her exposed to all these beautiful underwater worlds, especially coral. For me, it's like jewels under beneath the sea. So I guess that's really
It is. It
happy
is.
to hear that. And about this coral, visiting a coral area and so on.
Mhm.
Usually, what is the depth like of a coral reef, like from the sea surface? Because if you were to
Oh,
dive or to snorkel, perhaps
Mhm.
some people have this fear of water and depth and so on. So, what is the range of depth I mean, depth where a coral reef are usually found?
leaves, yeah.
Oh, okay. So for this question, for coral reefs, when we talk about shallow water reefs, it refers down to about 20 to 30 meters. And also for our usual diving license, yeah, you can't go more than 40 meters unless you have a specialized training and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
I
right? So
guess
even
open
open water,
water
you can
is
if
10,
open
right?
water, yeah, correct. So and
Yeah.
then when you advance, you can go up to about 18. So anything deeper, the diversity becomes less and less. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, there are deep water corals, but uh, we don't have any exploration yet in Malaysia, not as extensive and in some other countries. So when we talk about coral reefs here in Malaysia, we are referring to the corals that are growing between 0 to about 20, 30 meters. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in places like in Sabah, where the water is much, much clearer, you can see down to about 30 meters. Even in
Mm-hmm.
Malaysia, if you go out a bit off like places like in Pulau Tenggol in Terengganu, yeah, you can
Mm-hmm.
still see some nice corals up to about 20 meters
Oh.
depth. Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, let's not go too deep first. Enjoy the ones at the shallow waters.
Yeah.
If you are snorkeling, so beware of your buoyancy. Make sure you don't step on the corals. Even if you're a diver, also beware of your buoyancy.
Mm-hmm.
Try not to break the corals. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
won't say try. Please don't break the corals. Yeah, because it takes a
Yeah.
long time to grow. So back to the question. I forgot to answer your question. How long it takes to form a reef? I just recall this. So
Okay.
the fastest coral that we know grown is about 2 cm per month.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, 2 cm a year.
Wow.
And yeah, that's like fastest one. The slowest one will take a longer time. So it will take thousands of years to form a reef. So if you damage it, it just takes a few seconds to break it, and it takes
Mhm.
thousands of years to rebuild the whole coral reef. So please bear in mind,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, be aware of your surrounding when you go snorkeling and diving. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I
I
recently
see.
visited
Yeah, that's nice.
Kapas Island a couple of months ago after
Hmm.
the MCO was
Mm-hmm.
lifted and so on. I would say that they were really beautiful. Like I don't know if it is an effect of this MCO PKPB. Less people went to the islands and it really did wonders. I'm not so sure, but it was really beautiful after. I think after I visited Kapas Island, the last was in 2010, and going back after
Oh,
10
okay.
years. Definitely. I saw some beautiful coral reefs there. So it's wonderful. I guess so. That is the reason. If you want beautiful things, that really need to be taken care. So coral reef is definitely one of them. They are extremely fragile, and I would say that definitely do not do anything that will damage this reef. So we're going to touch more on that. So moving on to the
Yep.
next
Mm-hmm.
part. Before that, for the viewers, if you have any questions, you can type that questions in the comment box, and we will direct it to Miss Edmund at the end of the show. And moving on to the next
Yes.
part, Priya.
Okay, sure. So you've already explained like why we need to really take care of these coral reefs, and it's really difficult to get the coral reefs in a shorter period of time because it really took time to form that beautiful creature. So having a vast experience in these coral conservation works, Mr. Edmund, what are the main threats to the coral reefs ecosystem in Malaysia or in the world as generally? Maybe you can share with the audience.
Okay, sure. So just now we talk about the importance of the reef. Now we need to talk about the threats to the reefs, right? So basically, we can, for me, I like to split the threats into two big categories. One is referring to the global threats. One is referring to local threats. All right. So when we talk about global threats, it refers to big scale kind of events like climate change, which causes global warming, ocean acidification, and sea level rise. And when we talk about local threats, it's more like a local human driven impact, right? The global threat is also human driven, but local threats is a local population that causes the impact, right? So let's move on to the what we call this the global threat. So we in Malaysia we have experienced this now because of climate change. We begin to experience more frequent extreme weather. So this photo on the left is taken off Terengganu in one of the islands in Redang. So this is due to Pabuk. So back in early 2019, the East Coast has been hit by the tail of this typhoon called Pabuk. All right. So and then you can see here, this is what we have done the survey. This place where we done. You can see the survey line here, the transit line. So previous year, there's nice reefs here, nice corals, living, colorful corals. So then that year when we went back and do survey, it's all broken. You can see here it's broken and dead. So these are caused by more frequent extreme weather beginning to break the corals. Okay. Another event that has been happening quite frequently is mass coral bleaching. So mass coral bleaching, it's a physiological stress response by the corals. So remember I mentioned earlier, corals have zooxanthellae living in their tissues, right, and give them colors. So during coral bleaching, the water becomes warmer. So the zooxanthellae needs to be expelled from the corals because it's processing very actively and overfeeding and providing energy to the corals. So making them a bit more stressed. And the water warm, so it's stressed, they start to expel the zooxanthellae. All right, so hence the coral loses color, the tissue becomes transparent, and what you can see, it becomes white. So white is actually the skeleton of the coral. Right. So without the colors, the corals, remember coral is the animal, right? They still have tentacles, they can still do feeding, but they don't have that 90% of energy provided by the zooxanthellae anymore. So if it's in a long period, if the corals is bleached for a long period, then they will die, right? But if let's say the water temperature goes back to normal, then they will recover. So this is one of the things that we are facing in Malaysia, all right? Global threat. And here is just a record of how many times we have recorded mass coral bleaching in Malaysia. So the major ones is in 1998, 2010, a little bit in 2016, after that 2019, which is last year, and this year, because of MCO, we didn't manage to go out, but when we did, it was already showed some evidence that bleaching has happened, right? So some of the corals are recovering, we have some photo evidence, so we know that bleaching actually happened so frequent now. It used to be like 1998, 2010, then the gap of like 3 years. Now it's happening almost every year. So this is one of the threats that we are facing in Malaysia. All right. Then we move on to local threats. As I mentioned earlier, Malaysians love seafood, right? So there's a demand for it, and what we are worried is what we call overfishing, which means the supply is being taken out too much to fulfill the demand of Malaysians. Right. So when we do that, a lot of the large fish will be removed from the food chain. As we do that, then we start to go down to the food chain, and even the small fish who we categorize as herbivores will be slowly being taken out from the ocean, and then these herbivores cannot control the big algae, the bad algae. Algae is natural part of the reef, but if it's left uncontrolled, they will start to take over the reef. They become soft. There's no hard structure to provide shelter for other organisms. So then it causes ecosystem destabilization. So that's one of the problems. Yeah. And then in Malaysia, we face destructive fishing. So the pictures on the left are like real events, like fish bombing, usually happening most in Sabah. And then we have cyanide practice of cyanide fishing. So these used to be a problem. So on the right side is the card game, as I mentioned, Reefs. We categorize this in the scenario so that for the benefit for those who have no opportunity to go diving or snorkeling. So if you play this card, you'll be exposed to this kind of information like fish bombing, bottom trawling, cyanide fishing as one of the threats to our coral reefs. Okay. Of course, pollution. I think this is a very general topic. Everybody knows pollution.
Yeah.
I think if you follow the news, last 2 weeks, there was oil spill in Port Dickson, my hometown. Up to 3 kilometers of beach has been polluted by an oil spill, right? So this is one of the problems. And also ghost nets. Like sometimes fishermen or people, illegal, I would say, irresponsible people cut off the nets and let it drift, get stuck onto the reef, and it continues to fish, although it's left in the ocean. So this is what we call ghost net. So these are part of the pollution that we are facing. Right, as you can see the photo here in the middle, this is one of my colleagues who took this photo. A turtle died because being smothered. Yeah, a turtle died because of being smothered by the oil slick.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have these two type of threats introduced in our card game as well. So hopefully for those who during this CMCO period, you have no chance to go out to the ocean. If you play this game, hopefully you will be a little bit more aware of the issues, right? And this is becoming more prominent now, especially during CMCO when there's a lot of food delivery orders and taking away using single-use plastic in items. And a lot of times, because these items are light, it gets, if it's not managed properly, it will be discarded and then flow into the river and goes out into the ocean and then get washed up and ended up on the island, on the beach, or even just ended up on the beach on any of our coasts, right? So Malaysia is known to be the top 8 mismanaged plastics in the world. So something that we Malaysians need to be concerned about and trying to be aware about. We need to reduce our reliance on single-use plastic. So these are among the threats, right? As I mentioned many times earlier, I talk about tourism, but there's what we call there's the ugly side to tourism, which is when tourism becomes unsustainable, when there's too many tourists, mass tourism, uncontrolled tourism. Then we have an issue where you can't control people. People start vandalizing the corals, start breaking corals. There's not enough guides to manage a bunch of too many people. So there's not enough briefing, not enough information given. So then people tend to do all such of things because they don't know that corals actually are animal and it's a living thing, right? So they think it's a rock. So so that's why we emphasize on the first part. I need to clear the confusion. Coral is actually an animal, not a rock, not plant. Yeah. So and finally, one of the biggest problem is the nutrient, sewage, and industrial discharge into the ocean. So this photo was taken from on top of a plane. You can see there's a black color discharge from some agricultural industrial area, and it goes into the ocean, right? So for those who do not know where does all the discharge goes, it ends up in the ocean and eventually will affect the reefs. So on the photo on the right is when too much nutrient goes into the reef, algae will start grow very fast, and you can see it start to take over the reefs. Right here you have some hard corals, but here there are algae growing, and this will destabilize the ecosystem, as I mentioned earlier on. When compound with not enough herbivores, then there will be a problem. So I like this graphic because in this one picture it shows a summary of all the problems that we are facing in our reefs, all the threats that we have. All right, we have extreme weather, oil spill, we have industry and agricultural discharge, over tourism, and overfishing on this boat here. So despite the ocean, the coral reefs are providing a lot of benefits to us, a lot of importance to us. We at the same time create a lot of threats and a lot of damage to the reefs. So it's time for us to really think what we can do to solve to be less damaging to our coral reefs. Yeah. So I guess that's it.
There's one comment also from the viewer say that I just know that sunscreen chemicals are also bad for coral, is it?
Yes. So study has found that some chemicals in the sunscreen, for example, like oxybenzone and octinoxate, when they do the study in the lab, has been found to be causing induced coral bleaching and also affect the reproduction and DNA of the corals. So for now, using the precautionary principle, we try to avoid using products with these two chemicals inside. So if you want to use, go for eco-friendly option. If in the situation where you don't have that eco-friendly option, if you need to use sunscreen, apply an hour ahead before you go into the water. All right. So make sure that you apply it there before you go into the water, so it doesn't get washed off in the ocean. So that will help. Yeah. So these are the something what we call the eco-friendly practices that we can do. But of course, try to avoid using products with oxybenzone and octinoxate. If you just Google, look for chemicals that are harmful to the reefs, you will find a lot of chemicals, and you can search for the eco-friendly option. Yeah. Make
Yeah.
informed decision as a consumer. Yeah. So that I would
All right.
advise. So
Okay.
hope that helped to
Clarify,
answer questions.
confirm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, clarify the
That's a
questions. Yeah.
nice question. And I have another a question. Is coral reefs poisonous?
Sorry, come again.
Is coral poisonous?
Okay, so corals are cousins of jellyfish, right? So I wouldn't say
Okay.
it's poisonous, but it does have a sting, known as nematocyst, right? So if you happen to brush on coral, if you happen to brush, don't touch them. If let's say you accidentally brush corals, you will feel sometimes some stinging sensation. The severity depends on the different species, and also it depends on the sensitivity of a person's skin. So, yeah, generally they are the family of jellyfish, so it does have some stinging cells. The stinging cells are not, I wouldn't say harmful as in very harmful for human, not as bad as jellyfish, but they use this nematocyst to trap food. Like I mentioned just now, corals animal, right? So they have tentacles, so they still have this to trap some of the organisms. They can catch them and put them in the mouth and digest them in digestive system. So yeah.
So that's a very, very important point. So that for those who are not aware about this, maybe and why they should stay away from the coral reef when they do diving, just to explore the coral reef. You guys have to stay away from it. One of the reason is this, that it may cause some skin irritation, I believe, which severity is really dependent on the species itself, as mentioned by Mr. Edmund. So we are moving on to the next part of the session on, yes, we have touched on all about coral reef, the formation and species, and a little bit on awareness on conservation works being done and so on. So the next part is who is or are the stakeholder or holders
Mm-hmm.
who are responsible to protect coral reef, especially in Malaysia.
Okay. So when we talk about conservation, not just coral reef, about everything else. Identifying stakeholder is important. So I gonna make use of the card game that I co-created. So as an educational tool. So basically, conservationists, we know conservationists, they always want to do conservation. So there's no doubt about it. Fishermen are also important stakeholders because they rely on fishing for their livelihood. But if we can educate them how to do sustainable fishing, non-destructive fishing, that will be good as well, so that they can provide sustainable livelihood, or they move away from just fishing and do something else, have a diversity of livelihood. Natural resource manager, they have all the interest to protect the environment and coral reefs as well. Tourism operator. So why I mentioned tourism operator, because they have a role. If coral reefs are their asset, where they bring tourists, and that's where the economy comes in for them. But if they do not take care of the reefs, do not brief and do not control the tourists that they handle, then in the future we don't have enough reefs to attract people anymore. So that's why tourism operators have very important roles to protect the reef. Politician. Why I mention politicians is very important because we need the policymakers and politicians to drive the direction of the country. So like yesterday, we have the budget belanjawan.
Allocation.
Yeah. So we have some allocation for environment. I don't have the details because I haven't read the fine line about things. But now we see that with enough push for change, there will be more allocation, budget allocation to manage and protect our reefs and environment as well. Lastly, developer. Why I say developer? Because they have an important role. It's enough. We need them to understand that they cannot just destroy an environment and build something, then they claim it as an eco city or eco resort or whatever. They need to understand that if they want to develop something, they need to minimize as much as possible damage to the environment, not just on the reefs or on forests as well. So these are the people who in our card game, we identify as major stakeholders, but in real life, it also reflects the real situation. Besides that, I also want to highlight that local community, volunteers, people like you and myself, are also important stakeholders because we somehow directly or indirectly rely on coral reefs. And also, the younger generation will be important to include them in a discussion about conservation because the future is for them. So it's important to we start now, educate them, and so that they will also be protective of the reefs. So basically, in one word, everyone
Everyone.
is it's important stakeholder. It's just that you have different roles. Even like Priya, if you're in pharmaceutical, right? Doesn't mean that you don't have the background, you cannot do conservation. You can still do your part, like reducing plastic waste, so simple things like that, it can be very important stakeholder as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's nice.
Okay, so that's
So basically, it's everyone.
Yes, and
Yeah.
a session like this, communicating the points from this, I mean, of course, using your method is definitely effective. So at the end, it actually shows that our role, everyone's role in conserving coral. That's really wonderfully shared. I'm going to move to the next question, Priya. But before that, if for the viewers, I can see some questions from them. If you have any question to Ms. Edmund, you can type that in the comment box, and we will direct it at the end of the show in couple of minutes. So I'm gonna shoot the next question, which is what is Reef Check? You have been and also what is your current project with Reef Stakes? Mr. Edmund.
Okay. All right. So let me start with Reef Check. So Reef Check is actually an organization where I'm working. So Reef Check Malaysia is actually a conservation organization focused on coral reefs. What we are trying to achieve is a sustainable management of coral reefs in Malaysia. So my role in Reef Check is actually handling training and monitoring of coral reefs in all the sites in Malaysia. So without having data, we don't know how our reefs are doing, whether they're healthy or not, right? So that's what Reef Check is all about. We go and collect data to look at the reef health. Let me just move on so it's easier this way. Okay. So we look at the reef health, and then from the data, we can plan conservation strategy and management strategy to make sure that our reef is sustainably managed. All right. So we do a little bit of science in terms of trying to understand coral reef in terms of rehabilitation and bleaching monitoring. And now we are moving into resilience as well, how that the reef can actually bounce back from natural events. We do a lot of advocacy. We try to promote awareness. And as I mentioned earlier on, our goal is trying to achieve a sustainable management. So that's ultimately what we want to do. Okay. So through the data we have, we continue to do survey and monitoring, which is what we call citizen science. So you don't have to be a scientist. You just need to come and join us, take up a short course. We will train you how to identify the indicator species and what to count, what not to count. And then from there, we have the data and we can determine the reef health in Malaysia, right? So we also do a little bit of sustainable management where we try to promote eco-friendly practices. So like green fins is actually something that we are doing now. We are assessors for dive centers to see how the dive centers operate, whether their operation is eco-friendly or not. If not, if they're willing to become Greenfins member, we will give them advice on how to improve. So every year they need to improve their practices to become eco-friendly. So there's a rating. And recently, Greenfins in the whole world has just announced that 7 out of the top 10 most eco-friendly dive centers are actually in Malaysia. So we are doing quite good. We just need to promote more for these eco-friendly practices assessment and support them more, right? And when we talk about management, we cannot leave the community out of the picture. So what we are trying to do is we try to work with the local stakeholders, the local community, to drive them, to get them to participate in management of the coral reefs as well. So that's what Reef Check is all about. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to jump ahead by sharing what can people do. More importantly, that for everyone out there, if you have inspiration to share your story, make visual an opportunity and share with your network. All right. Take the opportunity to gain more knowledge, because knowledge is power, but with great power comes with great responsibility. Nowadays, a lot of people want to do conservation, but there's a lot of things are out there we are not sure. So please read a bit more, find out the background of the event, whether they are achieving the objectives or not, whether they have a long-term goals and objectives or not. So then you try to support those events, right? Get involved whenever you can. Join the civil society if you feel you need to or you are capable of, because policy is one of the important parts to make change. So if you have the knowledge, work with the government, try to propose some ideas to make change in terms of policy. Try to live and integrate yourself within the majority, which means we need to understand the majority, how people feel. You don't have to be like extreme conservationists, right? Start small steps. Start with yourself, with your friends, family first, and friends. Convince them, influence them to change. Then we will see some big change, right? And most importantly, support all these organizations like ourselves, Reef Check, other NGOs out there, maybe like Marisat, WWF, MNS, Save Our Seahorses. Even last week, I think See Through, right? The person who gave talk about See Through. So yeah, Turtle Conservation Society. Do give them the support that they need as much as can. If you can't give energy, you can contribute in terms of funding as well to keep the organization going. Okay. And also support businesses with green etiquette or eco-friendly practices, right? So then I just move on a little bit more to how to join Reef Check. If you are interested to become an eco diver, just check out our website, Reef Check, or our Facebook or Instagram. You just need to be a certified scuba diver. Check our prerequisites, sign up for our course, complete the training, and then you can join our annual survey. Yeah. And you asked about the project with Reef Sticks. So Reef Sticks actually nothing. It's a side project that I work on with a different bunch of friends. So you can see here, this is me with 3 other young, enthusiastic people. So all of us are passionate about the ocean and coral reefs. So we decided that not everyone get the chance to go out to the ocean and see the reefs for themselves. So we were thinking like, hey, why don't we bring something fun to them, to people who cannot go out and have the benefit of enjoying the ocean. So we decided to create a card game, and this card game is interactive, educational. You can see how I actually use the card to explain the processes, right, just now. So that's how it works. We also introduce iconic species so that Malaysians, especially the younger generation, know that we have this kind of species in Malaysia. Or else, if they go extinct, hopefully they are not, then people do not remember what iconic species we have. As I showed earlier in the slide also, we have introduced real threats and issues. So hopefully people who do not have any direct engagement on coral reefs, by playing this card game, they can understand the threat and the importance of coral reef ecosystem. So more importantly, it's fun to play, and we try to cater to as wide audience as possible. So people who doesn't have
Oops.
I think we lost him a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess some connection problem, but I guess while waiting for
We'll be
Mr.
back.
Edmund to be back, for you guys, if you have any question to Mr. Edmund, you can type that in the comment box, and we will direct it to him at the end of the show. So, Priya, how is it so far? I think like we have been an hour and 5 minutes live talking about coral, and I guess this is something new to you to speak to at this level about details about coral. So, what do you think about this entire
Yes,
show? So,
yes. This entire show was definitely an eye opener for me, and it is
Mhm,
also an eye treat for me because there are a lot of beautiful, beautiful coral reefs out there into the sea. And yes, to speak this far about coral reefs, this is the first time, and I do not regret it. This is really awesome, fantastic. I just start to realize there are a lot of things in the world, especially even in our country, in Malaysia, that
mhm,
myself personally I did not explore yet. And
mhm.
being in this show and getting know all this knowledge, I think this is definitely a good part of this journey where we can learn a lot of new things, and it's also how to say an awareness for us as a layman's uh,
Mhm.
to 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 get the feel of to protect all this nature uh, that we have in our country. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
that
Malaysia is
sense of
truly blessed.
responsibility, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And as what Edmund say, I would just want to rephrase his sentence. Without seeing something, we did not know the importance of it and to know how to protect it. So I think Edmund really, he did a fantastic job today. Okay, he is
Uh-huh,
on the
uh-huh. So
screen.
we have Edmund, Mr. Edmund back on stream. So I'm gonna add it. Hi
oh
Edmund. We
sorry,
kind of lost you while you were talking about the reef stake
The
cards,
reef
and
state.
your audience is quite wide. That is your target. So maybe we can pick up from there. If you still have the slides, you can share it back to us.
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, sure. So where did you lost me? Where did I get disconnected?
Yeah, the cards.
Cards. That's
And your
really
Okay, it's at this
audience
interesting.
is
point, right?
wide. Yeah. Yes, yes, that's right.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
wide
So
audience.
okay. So that's I was already towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the card game is designed to cater to wide audience. Even Priya
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
yourself, if you have not gone out into the ocean, no
Mm-hmm.
diving or snorkeling yet, if you play this card game, you'll be introduced to the beauty of the reefs and also the issues that we are facing in conservation.
Mm-hmm.
And just one last point before I ended just now was that this card game actually just received an international award last month
Amazing.
as the best non-digital completed game. We got this award by the International Educational Card Game Competition. So yeah, so we have just received an international award for the gameplay.
Nice. I think the parents can use
Congratulations
use
Yeah,
from
our
us.
stream feeling with one day. Oh my god, that's cute.
yeah.
So I guess one question about the card. Actually, to be honest, you did share a bit of your cards in your presentation today, and it's
Yeah.
really effective. I have to say that, and
Thank you,
no
thank you.
wonder you
Yeah,
actually won an international recognition for this project of yours.
Yes.
Kudos and congratulations from us. Tune in with Ranade. But one
thank
question about
you.
the card: is it
Mhm.
a soft copy or a hard
Oh, it's
copy or?
it's a card. Yeah, it's a card game. So the reason why we use physical card game because we want to have socializing, and during the gameplay, there's a lot of
Yeah.
interaction. So people will
Uh-huh.
like argue, challenge each other, talk to each other. So we wanted that kind of element
Mm-hmm.
in the card game. So yeah, we make it into a
Okay.
non-digital card game. Yeah, so it's available on our website. You can purchase
Okay.
it,
That's
but we are currently low on stock. So you can stay tuned. We have something
okay.
exciting to coming up in 2021. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I will put
Uh-huh.
aside my Monopoly
Okay,
for
so
a
that's
while
really,
and
really
I will start to
exciting.
play these card games very soon.
Yeah.
I was about to say that. Yeah, your Uno, your
Okay.
happy family. But I really like the concept of yours in creating this card, which is you say that you want the social interaction, the real life interaction to be there, and on top of it, the players will actually gain knowledge about coral reef. So that's really fantastic concept, and
Yes.
congratulations again. And we do have a number of
Thank you.
questions from the viewers, and we have been live for the past
From
an hour
Facebook
and 10,
and
11
from
minutes,
YouTube as well.
and YouTube, yes. So we have questions from
Mhm.
Facebook and YouTube. So I'm going to direct the first question, which is
Mm-hmm.
from Miss Rose Aniza Miat. How does coral population affect the zooplankton organism in the sea? This Edmund.
Mhm.
Oh, this is a tough question. This is a very technical question. So as I mentioned earlier
Okay.
on, so coral is an animal. They
Mhm.
they feed on things that move in the water column. So among the things that they feed on is actually zooplankton, basically plankton. All right. So
Mhm.
having a area with a bigger coral area. Usually the
Mhm.
water is clearer. So when water is clear, the zooplanktons are a bit less. So if you compare the East Coast and the West Coast, in West Coast where the water is a little bit murky, but actually they have a lot of high content of plankton in the area.
Okay.
So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm not sure where is she referring to. How does the coral population affect? But generally, in existence itself, both coral reefs and zooplankton are actually important because zooplankton is important food for the other for corals and also other organisms in the reef like fish, the smaller fish, even things like seahorses, right? Small fish. They also feed on zooplankton. So yeah, it really
Mhm.
depends on the context of where is the question coming from. So yeah, we can discuss that a bit later if Rose Aniza wants to
Yeah,
contact me.
yeah, yeah.
I think she's my friend.
Okay, she's your
Yeah,
friend. So I guess
Oh, okay.
definitely it's a technical question. It's definitely a
yeah.
technical question
Yeah.
for us to
It's a
sit and
complex
discuss
it's a
in
complex
here.
thing.
But
Yeah. So for me to
definitely,
break it down,
Miss Rose, you
it's
can.
very challenging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I guess you can contact Mr. Edmund. We will share the contact details, and I believe she has
One.
your contact details. So we're moving on to the next part. From next question, Priya is from Farah one. I'm going to
Para one.
display that. Yeah,
Yep. Is the coral
Priya.
reefs can be affected towards monsoon season and storms? So this is
Okay.
about
So I'm
the
gonna
natural
answer.
phenomenon.
Yeah, the effect by storm first, as I mentioned earlier on,
Oh, this is a
when
really nice question.
among the threats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Among the
Yep.
threats we have becomes extreme weather, so the
Extreme.
storms are getting
Yeah.
stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
stronger and stronger, then it comes to a point where the reefs cannot withstand the strength, and then they will break. So this is how they can be affected. In terms of monsoon, there's a little bit of water movement. So sometimes the water becomes clearer. So you will see nice visibility in the reefs. So at sometimes when the monsoon becomes stronger as well, so the reefs are also being affected. So every time after monsoon, you can see some reefs will have broken corals rolling on the sand. So yeah, to answer her question, they can be affected by monsoon and storm as well.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. So that hopes that answers Miss Parawan's question, and we're moving on to the next question. This is kind of interesting, so I'm going to just add his point of view first.
Yep.
Like this is from Mr. Azmi Abadi. He said that I've watched several documentaries such as Chasing Corals, and it caught my attention to its coral reefs, and he is actually an aquaculture diploma student and just wondering where
Mm.
should I further my studies in Malaysia if I want to be a coral specialist. So yes,
Okay. So
Oh.
I'm not sure where is he studying currently. But I would say like there's a few places
Mm-hmm.
in Malaysia, a few universities where they are well known to have marine studies. One of them is University of Malaysia Terengganu.
Mm-hmm.
All right. My alma mater,
Yeah.
mine too.
University of Malaysia, have some work on aquaculture as well if he's continuing
Mm-hmm.
interested. In Sabah, University of Malaysia Sabah is one of the place where you can go. They
Oh,
also
nice.
have one coral specialist there. In UMT also they have some coral specialists. So these are
Mm-hmm.
the few places where, in UKM, University Kebangsaan Malaysia is also another place where they can go. These are the
Mm-hmm.
few big universities that I know that you can further your studies
Offering.
in
Mm-hmm.
terms of marine. Yeah. So UMT is one of the places you can check out. Yep.
Yep. So that definitely answered Mr. Azmi Abadi's question. Thank you so much for
So
the
we have
question.
a
I'm
future
really proud.
coral specialist here.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. What?
We have a future coral specialist here as a
Yes.
audience.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. That's really nice.
Yeah.
And we
We have one
next
more.
question is Farah
I think this
from
one is
one.
the same person from the YouTube just now. One Farah.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exact
Yeah. So
exact
I
same
guess it's a
Yeah,
question.
different
Yeah.
she sent the
question.
question in bold. Yeah.
Okay. So she's actually watching from two platforms. That's
Yeah.
yeah. So next
Let's
question.
take this. So this from Miss Anis Fadili. Hi, Mr. Edmund. How was the COVID-19 pandemic affect the current fish stock and coral reefs conditions? So this is from the
Hmm.
current
Nice.
scenario.
Okay. So I'm gonna explain this carefully. Because so when COVID pandemic happened, there's less human activity. So there's a lot of reports of people seeing more things. But that
Mm-hmm.
may not necessarily reflect that the population has grown big and stuff like that. It could also it could mean that with less human disturbance, so the organisms come
Mm-hmm.
a bit closer to the shore rather than they used to
Mm-hmm.
be away when there's a lot of human being, right? So
Mm-hmm.
based on our reef check data, unofficial, the preliminary data that we have so far, there is not much change in terms of the reef condition,
Mm-hmm.
even in fish stock as well. But that doesn't mean that it's not a good thing. It just shows that our coral reefs have been facing a lot of impact for so long, and with the current gap of time, the current stretch of time where no human activities or less human activity, it's not enough
Two.
for the reefs to recover. We need a bit more time to give them to
Mhm.
recover. Of course, we have
Mm-hmm.
seen a little bit more, as I mentioned, observation of things coming back because less human, so they come closer. But based on our data, there's not much change in terms of the coral reef condition and also the reef fish stock. But one thing we noticed in our data is that organisms that cause problems, like for example, crown of thorns and sea urchins, if they are in high numbers, which means there's an imbalance in the ecosystem. So from our
Mm-hmm.
data this year, the number is very, very low. So it shows that's a good thing, which it also reflects that maybe some of these organisms are being eaten by their natural predators because less
Mhm.
human, they are coming back, so they are controlling the
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem. So yeah, with given a bit more time, then I'm sure that we'll be able to see much more positive or impact. But having no change is actually good because previous years the trend is going downwards, so it's declining.
Mm-hmm.
So having this year, it
Okay.
doesn't change much. It goes to
Study.
show that okay, there's an opportunity for it to come back. So hopefully,
Mhm.
we
Mm-hmm.
can do something about it. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I guess this break or this sudden pause of many activities due to this pandemic is something that most of the conservationists are looking forward to see what are
Yeah.
the impact it has left to this environment with the absence or reduced in human activity in the
Yeah.
marine environment especially. So yeah, I guess we really hope that good improvements will be seen as for many parts in marine. We have so many specialists with respect to marine ecosystem. So yes, that's on that, and that will be our last question from the viewers. Thank you so much
Okay.
for the questions from all the viewers, and last but not least, perhaps Mr. Edmund can share on how the viewers can contact you if they have any questions about coral or any questions or would like to be a volunteer with Reef Check Malaysia.
Okay, so if it's related to, if you want to join us at volunteer for reef check activities,
Mm-hmm.
let me just show the last slide again so that people can just mark it down.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go to our our social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or you can check our website, www.reefscheck.org.my. Drop us an email there from the website, or drop us a message on our social media, stating your interest. Yeah, we will get back to you. Or if you follow our updates on social media, occasionally we will have activities or campaigns running that people can participate. Especially now during CMCO, there's no physical movement. Yeah, we might be coming up with some fundraising program, some activities like doing your own cleanups with your own community. Yeah, so we have that kind of activities up on our social media. So do follow us, and that's where the best source of information you can get.
Sure.
Okay, and also I would like to share his email address, Mr. Edmund's email address. You can also
Yes, sure.
email him directly should
Or
you
you can
have
drop me an
any.
email. Yes.
Yes, and yes, and that's about it on our session for the last an hour and 20 minutes or so. I feel really excited today. Really, like about coral and about marine stuff. Definitely, I'll have a special place in my heart. So, how do you find it, Priya?
Yes, as I said earlier, this is definitely a new thing, totally a new thing for me. And yep, this definitely a good, knowledgeable session. I think not only adults, the parents who have kids at home, they even can show this videos to the kids so that they can create an awareness from the starting itself. As what Mr. Edmund says, the future belongs to the kids who are
Yeah,
now, especially the card games.
the card.
Maybe
Yes,
definitely a
yes.
good
Start.
idea for all the
Yeah.
parents to do
Uh-huh.
something. Yep. So this is
Yes, that's
definitely a
wonderful
fantastic
one.
episode. Yep.
Amazing. So, any perhaps Mr. Edmund would like to say, okay, we do have one more question. Would you like to take that up? Is it okay?
Yeah.
One more. Sure. One last question. I can see that she's really into this. One last question from one Farah. Just want to know if is whether coral
Yeah.
atolls can keep up with the sea level rise. So this is kind of a little bit higher level, coral atolls and so on. So yeah, maybe in brief, in brief, you can answer one Farah's question, Mr. Edmund.
Oh, if you ask me, based on the research information and the level, the rate at it's going, I can just one word. No, they cannot keep up with the sea level rise. The sea level rise, if it happens, the coral atoll will be submerged deeper. Yeah, it's projected to rise about 100 meters in, I can't remember, in the next 50 years. So yeah, corals grow very slowly. So it will take a long time for them to catch up.
That's I believe one Farah is actually into maybe she's doing some sort of research in about coral must be or if at all I can see her interest in knowing more about coral. So that's the end of our show. Perhaps a few words from Mr. Edmund before we end the show.
So first of all, thank you for having me here in this session. I hope that it was. I mean, I didn't share too technical. It's hopefully it's good enough for the wide audience. For those who are out there interested in coral reefs, I just hope that get more knowledge about it, find out a bit more, look up a bit more of information, and do remember whenever you go for tourism, holiday around islands or beach, make sure that you be concerned about your activities, your actions that will harm the environment. You can still start now during the CMCO by observing how you use your waste, electricity, water, plastics. Yeah, because every single person, if they do something small, it will create a bigger impact. All right. So just like the virus, if one person can spread to a lot of people, so imagine if your positivity, your actions spread around your community, it will create a very big impact. So I hope that because the future, the environment is for our children. If we don't protect it now, then there will be no hope. So yeah, that's the takeaway message I have.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Edmund, again for the wonderful sharing and the thought of conveying your knowledge to social media platform users. And of course, I believe this will reach to many people outside there, because this video will be available in our page, and also will be available in YouTube page,
Yeah,
YouTube
YouTube
channel,
page.
and also we have it in Instagram and as well as in LinkedIn. So we believe that this knowledge will reach many people outside there. And with that, thank you so much once again for spending your time with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye
All right.
bye.
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 And that's a wrap for our episode 21, Priya. And I guess we have, yes, 21 weeks, and I feel totally amazing, and can't wait to go further. And as for today, I guess it's a wrap from us. I'm Ranjini.
And I'm Devapriya signing off,
Signing
guys.
off,
Good
guys.
night.
Bye.